My name is JoAnna Pettit Almasude, The Power of Art. I'm starting off with a little quote here, which I think is very meaningful. It says, "One moment can change a day, one day can change a life, and one life can change the world." And I added this to my presentation because I think it's quite profound. And it's something that I'm always aspiring to and sort of chasing, but you know, like anyone else who's trying to do that, it's like most of the time I don't make it. Anyway. A little bit about me. My educational background, I have a Bachelor's of Fine Arts and a Master's of Fine Arts from Ohio University in the United States. I've been a professional artist for 35 years, and I was an art professor for 24 years. The last few years of, about 7 years of my academic roles, I was the academic program director for game art design and media arts and animation at the Art Institute of Pittsburgh in the United States. I also, besides art professor, I was also a department chairperson for interior architecture and graphic design at Salalah, the University of Salalah in Salalah, Oman, right next door to you guys. So I came so close for a year, but I never made it to see you guys. But anyway, here I am. That's about me. Are people born with the talent for art? Learn skill. It's basically a nature versus nurture question. Can you hear me? No. Testing, testing. Can you turn me up a little bit? Testing, testing. Okay. So again, are people born with the talent for art, or is it a learned skill? Okay, it's nature versus nurture. How many? Oh, okay. So that's. First, I'd like to ask. Raise your hand. Almost everybody, right? Almost everybody. Great. Okay. How many believe that you were a born artist? Like you came out like wanting to be an artist from the beginning. Okay, great. I found as an art professor, I had every class I taught. Okay. Okay. Testing.
Is there going to be a feedback between these?
I am now.
Thank you. Testing. Okay. Now you guys are going to have to watch me try to balance this thing. Okay, I'll do my best. Anyway, so we'll go back to the question. Show of hands, how many here believe you're a born artist? A lot. That's great. Okay, good. Okay, now I'm going to tell you my story. Just a little. Going back once upon a time, long, long ago, about 53 years ago. Okay? And there's me, 2 years old. And this is what I did. Yeah. And I was happy. Okay? There we go. How many people of you born artists did things like this? You just mark, oh, wow. So there's more born artists here than you thought, right? If you did this, you probably are, right? Because this is what I did. This is like 53 years ago. So, anyway. Now, I think that it's just like a natural human thing to do. I mean, I think everyone, to a certain extent, are born artists. I mean, if you think about it, everybody familiar from art history with the caves, the cave paintings? If you haven't been there yet, you'll get there. This one is in France from 17,000 years ago. This one is in Indonesia, 40,000 years ago. I'm not going to go into art history too far. But then I found some from India. It was like kind of cool. These here, which you guys may be familiar with in India. So, I mean, I think that, I don't want to get into art history, but I do think that humans have been doing this a long time. And, as children, we're doing it too. Okay? So, now, what do you do when your child will not stop it? This is the question. I don't know about you guys, but my mother, see, it says dramatization, by the way. See, this is not really my mother. But she really had a big problem with me. I mean, I had paper and pencils and stuff. My father was a printer, so he had all of this free paper. No, I didn't want to do it on the paper. I wanted to do it on the wall. That's too cool. So what's the solution? Like, for you guys, anybody, is this what your parents did? Did you lock it up? Take away all your... That's what my mother did. She basically took away every writing tool there was, and she said the only way I could use it was if I sat at the table and drew on paper. Okay, so I basically banned from crayons. I invented charcoal. My father was a smoker. My father was a smoker, and I figured out, and it tasted terrible. I still remember that taste. If you take that and then you lick it, you can really make some really nice charcoal drawings on the walls. Another thing is my sister liked cars. I was a doll person, but my sister had cars. And I figured out if you pulled the tires off of them, they made really good marks too. And literally my mother will tell you the story. She says that she literally would be painting and I would be following her behind, redrawing on the walls. So the drawings were back, except they were no longer in color. They're in black and white because I was doing charcoal. So she just really didn't know what to do. I mean, I think she even spanked me. It didn't stop. It didn't stop. So anyway, long story short, we skipped through. Back then, like over 50 years ago, there wasn't like chalkboard paint and stuff. She just kind of like got up this idea like, oh, if I paint flat black paint on the wall and give her some chalk and give her a certain area, maybe she'll do it. And that's exactly what she did, and it worked. Did anybody else get a chalkboard from your parents? It's a really good thing to do so the kids can do their art. Anyway, that's what she did, and that's what helped me. Moving on. Now, after about 30 years of experience teaching art, at the university level and even preschool, dealing with preschoolers, I've come up with the following observations concerning nature versus nurture on becoming an artist. For one thing, I will just tell you that my mother, after going through all of this, decided I was an artist. She decided she was going to nurture me to be an artist. So she went and she researched artists, and she figured out how to raise an artist. And she told me that, she's Christian, and she told me that was a gift from God. You know what I mean? And I kind of like bought into that for a while. I thought, oh, it's a gift. But then if you think about it, like, how can it be a gift and you want to be a teacher? Like, if it's a gift, who's going to learn it? There'd be no such thing as teaching. So you got to kind of believe that people can learn. But anyway, so I came up with these sort of basically 4 distinctions when it comes to nature versus nurture. Number 1 is you can have kids who display a strong artistic skill, doing all that drawing and showing some talent when they're young, and they have a great artistic passion, and they do have a high potential to be great artists, right? You can have a kid that has very little artistic skill very young, but a great passion, and they still can learn. They can learn it, and they can get there. You can also have strong artistic skills, and this is the case of my kids. I wanted to be like when I had kids, I wanted to be like the Wyeths. I don't know, you guys probably don't know the Wyeths, but there's a family of artists in the United States that's generation after generation of artists. And I was like, cool, that's what I want. I want artist kids. It's going to be easier for them, because for me, it's been a big struggle. Because I don't have anybody to look up to. I don't have any guidance towards it. My parents tried to help, but they were not artists. And once you have a parent that's an artist, they could, it's like anything where you have the generation after generation. But anyway, so my kids, all 3 of them, had very strong talent. And I was like, yes, especially the youngest one. 2 years old, drawing like so well. I let them draw on the walls. I didn't care. I was like, yay, draw on the walls. I can paint them later, And but they didn't have the interest. So I have these talented kids. No interest. The oldest one, 29, he went into politics. He's now like working for the NSA in the United States. Oh my God. So the middle one is a doctor. She just finished her MD. And the youngest one is a computer hacker. Yeah, computer hacker, like doing all sorts of things. Anyway, but not illegal, not illegal. I said when the police come knocking, you're in big trouble, you know. So, anyway, but they really do well with that. But, you know, no artists. In fact, they didn't really even care much for my art career. So anyway, but I do think, I mean, when I had students who had such a great desire, but they didn't have as much talent, it was really hard, you know, because you really want them to be able to learn. And anyway, moving on to fine art versus commercial art, and I think this is very important because I found that a lot of my students, now maybe that's not the case here, but they really didn't know the difference, especially for the undergraduates. And I think it's kind of important to know the difference. At some places, if you go and you look this stuff up, they'll say, oh, that's cliche, that's an old term. And there is a lot of crossover, it's true. But I think when you're going into a field, like most of the people here who are probably art students, I mean, you're going to be going into a field where you do web design, you know, illustration, graphic design, all of those you're going to be working for somebody. If you get a job, you're going to be working for somebody else and doing those projects. An animators, I mean, for my students who took my 2D animation classes, they were like, Disney. That was their big goal, is to work for Disney. But if you work for Disney, you're going to be doing somebody else's work. It's great, but it's somebody else's work. It's going to be commercial art. You can do a career at that, and that's great, but it is working for somebody else and working on someone else's project. And a lot of times, you can't even show the work in your portfolio. I had people who couldn't show. I had professors apply to me, because I was the director, so I was hiring professors for my department, and they couldn't. They'd be like, oh, you know, trust me, I can't show my portfolio because Disney won't let me do it. I'm like, well, you know, which is a problem, but anyway. Well, with commercial art, basically, that tends to be created to sell something. Not always, but it's created to sell something. They tend to be team productions. Game designers, I mean, game artists work in huge teams, same as animators. They tend to be big business ventures, especially in the United States. More often than not, they require a college degree now. In the past, you didn't have to have a college degree. And again, the artists work on projects that are designed and owned by others. So when you're doing that, you're not really working on something that you're really owning. You get to have the credits, that's great, but you don't own it. Now, fine art tends to be created as an aesthetic object. It's appreciated by its fine and unique qualities. There is crossover between those two. Mostly are individual productions, although there can be some that are done in teams. Most fine art requires little to no financing. That's why I do it. It doesn't require a college degree, even though a lot of people go for it. And artists work on projects that they create from their own ideas, you know, and ideas that they end up owning. In terms of careers, I mean, I've just listed them all. I'm not going to go through them all. For commercial art, of course, you know, they have this idea of a starving artist, and for fine artists, that's a high possibility. That's why I went and I got my degrees, is because I decided I don't want to be a starving artist. I want to be an artist, but I'll teach. You know what I mean? That way I can teach and still make the art that I want to make. You can also do these things and make the art you want to make too on the side as well. Here's some careers in fine art. There's more than just being an artist. There's being an artist, exhibiting and selling in galleries is number one, but you can also be a professor. There's museum positions in fine arts, curators in fine arts, curators, and critics and such like that. So there are some careers in that. And then commercial art is huge. That's probably why most of you that are here are in that area. It's a huge demand. I know in India it's a huge demand because the school that I worked for hired and used NIIT. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but NIIT helped create most of our online courses for the Art Institute of Pittsburgh. So I worked very closely with NIIT when I was there. So in India, I know it's a really big, there's a lot to do in there. So that's good. Okay, so now that's the question. How many here are going to school to be a fine artist? Oh, we have 2. Great. Okay, good. You can always teach, right? Commercial artists? Whoa, yeah, there you go. Now, the good thing about art is there's crossover, you know? I did both of my degrees in fine art, and I did them before the internet. I did them before email. And I taught myself all the digital stuff. And I taught it myself so early that by the time I was looking for a job, nobody had a degree in game art. Nobody had a degree in animation yet. We were some of the first ones that got in there because we learned it on our own, and then we were able to go and teach it. We had the degrees to teach it, so you can always cross over. Okay, now I'm going to go through the process of becoming an artist and finding your artistic passion and your artistic voice. So now we're going to get into that. I think there's some requirements. And this one goes back to what I was talking about with the kids. They have all this talent, but they have no interest. You know, you got to really love it, you know? And you got to really have a passion for it. You can't just be like, oh, I love games. I like to play games, and then go, I'm going to be a game artist, you know, and you've never drawn. You just played games. I had a lot of students like that coming into my program before because they were passionate about playing games, and they thought that playing equals making art. Anyway, another thing, the second requirement is, you know, this is basically what you do in undergraduate. You know, you're learning to see. I always use the book Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. A lot of these exercises are exercises to help you learn to see. In terms of learning to see for myself, and this was before I even had the book, because I you know, when I was a freshman in college, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain was the first book that was thrown at me. But this is what I was doing in high school. So in high school, this is when I was 16, I was studying Michelangelo. I mean, I wanted to be an artist, right? So this is what I did, 16, and I was just really studying, shadowing, how to control the form and all that type of stuff. And that was sort of on my own. When I was 16, I was in high school in the United States, and my art teacher hated me. It was so sad, but I only had her for 2 years. She gave me an F once. My mother was a teacher. There was a big brouhaha. A meeting happened, and then I got all A's. But I worked hard. I just not like it. Anyway, but it was sad to have an art teacher didn't like you. Anyway, so this is what I was doing around 17. I was studying muscles. This is all the standards, and I loved Michelangelo. I read the Agony and the Ecstasy and all the history of Michelangelo, and I knew what he did. He dissected people. He did all this stuff to study anatomy, and I was going to do it too, because I wanted to be a sculptor. And then when I was 18, I was doing stuff like this. I was drawing from life, you know, learning how to see. So this is the case of, like, I worked in a daycare center, and I was drawing kids, and I went to a camp, and that's a chair from camp. And this is a sculpture I did when I was 18 in high school. And so I was on my way. You know, I was ready to go to college, and I did get a pretty good scholarship for college. Requirement 3 is learning the technical concepts for solid art vocabulary. And that's one of the things I didn't have. I could do all that other stuff, but, you know, really going to college was humbling to me because I really had to spend time to actually learn how to control everything. You know, you had to learn all of the definitions. This is what you guys are doing in foundations, probably. You can self-teach the technical skills to create. However, being able to control and manipulate the medium to successfully communicate your thoughts requires all of these concepts. If you want to create tension in your image, how do you do it? You know, you got to understand those tactics that you can use in composition. Anyway, so moving on. Samples of my undergraduate work, a lot of life studies. We did lots of life studies, you know, drawing from life. These were all oil pastels. And by the time I was a senior, I was back to studying artists again that I loved. I liked Paul Cadmus, so I was doing sketches of his work. And another requirement, I think, is learning art history. And art history is required in the United States. I assume it probably is just about everywhere. Not just memorizing dates, though. When I took art history, I just suffered through it. They expected you to memorize the dates and the names and learn how to spell them, which is I can't spell. I'm terrible at it. And, it ended up being a disaster for me. I would sit there and listen to the great stories. I had great art history teachers, but when you got a test, it was horrible. It was a bad experience, but I made it through. Anyway, so a few of the artists that really ended up touching my soul in terms of art history, which made an impact on my work, is Frida Kahlo. Is anybody familiar with Frida Kahlo? Oh, wow, great. She's excellent. She's pretty famous from the movie Frida that came out a few years ago, and a Mexican artist. But what I think is important about her work is exactly what she's talking about. This is from the movie Frida. If you get a chance to see it, it's wonderful. I used to have it required in my when I taught art appreciation at Francis Marion University, and the students loved it. It's a fantastic. If you want to learn to appreciate art, and art appreciation in the United States is a whole bunch of students that are not going to major in art, and they're just being introduced to art. So you got to kind of give them art and not make them hate it. So that's what I would try to do. But anyway, she was very severely hurt, for those who don't know. She was a Mexican artist. I think she was born in the early 1900s. And she had I think she was going to be a medical doctor. And she was on a bus ride that was hit, and she got severely injured to the point where she almost died. And she ended up having braces and all these surgeries and all this stuff. And she ended up so hurt that she couldn't do anything, but she ended up taking up art. So a lot of her stuff is very introspective, and she deals with all sorts of concepts about women, the self, the traditional, Mexican culture versus the colonial culture that took over in Mexico. And she had, her husband, I won't go into all the details, but it's a very fascinating story. And when I first saw her art, I wasn't that moved by it. I just thought, looks a little surrealistic. I don't know exactly what's going on. She's saying something. But once you understand her story, you understand it's very powerful. Very amazing. So if you get a chance, it's a good thing to see. Another artist, and I'm only going to go over two, although there's so many, that really touched me as art history was Kathy Kollwitz. Is anybody familiar with Kathy Kollwitz? Oh, yay, good, couple, that's good. She was a German expressionist, and she survived the war, and her work, to me, is very powerful. And that's one thing that's important to me, is basically creating work that I hope is powerful. When people see it, it brings up emotion. So this is one of her pieces. It's from 1919. It's a woman holding a dead child. Like I said, she kind of lived through, I think, the First World War. Maybe, I don't think the Second World War. But she saw a lot of things happening in Germany, and she captured the emotion of it very nicely. This is another piece that she did called The Survivors, and it's showing the displacement that happens with war. And it's very simple, but very, very emotional. Here's another one called Mothers. Anyway, in the process of becoming an artist, I went through basically all this technical stuff. I learned all the technical. I developed my skill technically. I learned the vocabulary. I started learning how to manipulate it so that I could actually say what I wanted to say and people would understand it. And then I wanted to to me it was important to actually say something. Say something that would help the world. This is the goal. For me, it was always that. When I was in graduate school, I looked around and I thought, I'd already done all the art history. I studied all the artists, and I said, wow, there's a lot of art about Christianity, a lot of religious artwork out there. Because that's what was paid for by the church. And then there's all this other types of work out there, lots of portraits of kings and queens and all that type of stuff. But there's certain groups that are not, I didn't see any artwork about them at all. The first group I saw, and I worked with, after my undergraduate, I spent about 7 years working in social services. And there I worked basically helping mentally retarded adults live independently in the United States. So I was a service coordinator. So I did paintings of my clients. And that's what I used for my portfolio to get into graduate school. So I did all of these pictures of basically people who are ignored, and I thought, wow, I've done something that I don't see. I wanted to do something unique, and I want to do something different. And my professors are like, why? But I was working with them. It was interesting to me. I have an older sister who is mentally disabled, so to me, I've always been around that, and I think that that's an important thing. Why not include them into art? Why not include them into the discussion? And in graduate school, I ended up addressing another group, and this is in 1990 through 1993. And that was LGBT. I did LGBT. All my graduate work was LGBT. So I felt like there's nothing about them. Now there is a lot more going on, but at that time there was nothing, and I thought, this group is completely ignored. Why don't I work on this group? And it was interesting because I wasn't really thinking about it politically, but my professors kept saying, why are you doing that? Really? And I had to defend it, and I did, and I graduated, but it was like one of the most exciting parts was this particular painting. I mean, they were very subtle. I mean, basically, this is Dina and Norel, okay? And it was accepted into this exhibition at another university called the Women's Diverse Reflections. And I was like, yay, okay, send it off. And I was still, this was when I was just finishing up my master's degree. And then this is before email, internet. I got this in the mail saying, guess what happened to your painting? Here are the, it was up for 3 months. It was supposed to be shown for 3 months. And basically an outcry, the painting was taken down. There were complaints by the administration saying, why are we showing this painting? And then there was a protest. Evidently the students all got together and protested. And then they forced the administration to put the painting back up. And then when they put it back up, they put it in the hallway outside so everybody could see it as they walked by. So it was like very controversial. And I was like, I didn't get it, it was really far away from me. But anyway, besides the newspaper articles, there was also someone who did a cartoon about it. And it says, perhaps a mustache on one and a brassiere on the other would make it okay. I thought that was really cute. Anyway. Now, that moves us on to this. This is one of the things I wish I had known years ago. Okay? I studied psychology. I knew about personality, but I never knew this. This is something that was introduced to me just last year, which I wish I had known about myself because I would have understood myself a lot better. And I highly recommend, if you have never done this before, that you actually take a personality test. And it'll really tell you a lot about yourself. This one that I took, and there's lots of them online, they pretty much all come up with the same solution because they're very scientific. Psychology's been doing this for a long time, so you can really get some really interesting information. And ironically, I took this test more than once, and it came out with exactly the same result. But basically, I'm the advocate. That's what it said. And that's exactly my personality. I wish I had known this before because I'm like, oh yes, I can defend myself. I'm the advocate. Basically, it's called INFJT. I'm also a diplomat in my role, and my strategy is constant improvement. And ironically, a lot of my students are that way. Now that I'm teaching community classes, all my students got together, they were all excited, well, we're going to take the personality test too. Almost all my students have very similar personalities, they're all introverts. These are my results. I'm introverted 86%, which is like huge. You wouldn't know that seeing me in front of the crowd, but I'm talking about art, which is my favorite thing. Meanwhile, if I meet people in the grocery store, I hide behind my husband. Intuitive is 58%, feeling 58%, judging. Now, each one of these has a specific meaning that you can look up. It's not exactly what you would think. And turbulent is 63%. Now, one of the reasons I took this is because my mother gave it to me. She goes, I took this personality test, and you wouldn't believe the result. I want you to take it too. I want to see what your result is. And I'm like, she says, I think you're going to be just like me. And I took it, and it took me a couple weeks because I was so busy. And it doesn't take that long to take it. I just took it, and then I forgot to get the results, and then I got the results, and I forgot to send it to her. Finally, I just sent it to her. I didn't even read it. And then she goes, yes, you're just like me. You got to see this. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then when I read it, I was like, oh my God. You know what I mean? Because my personality type is very rare, making up less than 1% of the population for so many reasons. But anyway, long story short, my youngest kid has Asperger's, high-functioning autism, and so do I, and so does my mother. But evidently, this personality type, I'm almost not believing in it because it's a personality type. The personality type of people who are diagnosed with high-functioning autism have this personality. They're either INFJ or INTJ. And my daughter is INTJ. She's thinking, I'm more feeling, but anyway. But everybody's in her. Very interesting stuff, because if you go into your personality and you understand yourself better, I mean, some people call it finding themselves, some people call it whatever, but this is just one of the tools you can use. You don't have to do it, but I think it's interesting because if you see what makes you tick, that's another tool that you can use to help communicate more about yourself in your art. And understanding who you are is also a lifelong process. It's something that I've been working on for a long time. And like I said, the personality test, which I'm giving you guys, which I wish I had when I was your age, would have helped me a lot. It helped me now. I mean, it helped me with my husband. I told him, you got to take this personality test. I want to see what's going on with you. And it helps me so much get along with him better. Now that I understand that he's just not out to get me sometimes. He actually has this personality that's very different than mine. Ironically, we're very well suited according to this. Actually, we are ideal for each other, but we're very different. But now that I understand him, I'm more patient. Anyway, but understanding yourself is a lifelong process. It's not something you can get. What are your values? You know, I mean, as an artist, I think it's important to understand your values. What do you think is fair? You know, what responsibility do you have to anything, to yourself, to the world, to a community? What's the most important thing in your life? These are the things you need to think about, because in being an artist, it's one thing to work for somebody else, but as an artist, I really think that everybody, every commercial artist should consider doing art for themselves. When you're not out there working for money, like, what are you going to do? What are you going to add to this world? What can you do to actually make it better? And I think art is a very powerful thing. It's so powerful that in the United States, from the early 1900s on, they only funded abstract artwork. It's like if you were doing representational work, you're getting no money. However, and that was in contrast to Russian realism. I mean, you know, the socialist realism. The socialism was doing realism. You know, the United States was doing abstract, because abstract doesn't, I mean, there's nothing political that you can say in abstract work, especially non-objective. The non-objective is just like, it's all about surface, it's all about texture, it's all about matching the couch. You know, every bank has that, because you wouldn't want to have something there that might, you know, upset somebody. You know, you don't want to have, you know, something there that might make people think that there's something wrong. So, I do think that that's a very important thing. Anyway, so yeah, I remember that. My own concern has always been centered on humanity. And this is before I took my personality test last year. So the main topics in my art has always been focused on marginalized people. That's been the most interesting thing to me. From 1984 to 1989, people with disabilities. From 1990 to 1993, I was doing LGBT issues with women's issues. From 1994 to the current, I've been working on issues of the mother and women's issues and indigenous people of North Africa. And people can probably guess, you know, my husband's from Morocco. That started then. When I met my husband, he got me immediately involved into a project that he was working on where in his master's thesis he did, I forget the name of it. He did a book for his master's thesis, and he wanted me to illustrate it. So that got me started, and then I just kept going. Because his people of North Africa, he's indigenous to North Africa. They call him Berber, but really they call themselves Amazon. And that might be why he's not here with us today. Because actually, he was a human rights activist in Morocco. And that's how he ended up leaving as a refugee, because he got into big trouble being a human rights activist, especially dealing with the indigenous people and their language and all of that, because in Morocco, that was not accepted back in the 80s, in the early 90s. And he ended up getting arrested, tortured, waterboarded, and then he escaped as a refugee. And I put that on his thing for the visa. That might be why they didn't accept him. I don't know. But I wanted to be honest. I didn't want to lie. If they find out, he lied. I don't know. Anyway, I'm the one who filled it out. He's like, why did you do that? I'm like, well, I'm just being honest. Anyway, that might be why it's not here. This is some of the pieces that I did for his master's thesis. Oh, it's called Defying the Gods. That's the name of his master's thesis. It's fantastic. It's about indigenous music that is basically resistance music. So they had a lot of resistance music, and they would use all these very interesting words that the government didn't understand to kind of like defy the government about the indigenous people. So I did a lot of work with that. This one, called Mother's Tears, it's really hard to see. This is not a very good way to see it, but it's got Azia, the native language, tattooed like across the skulls, and it's showing the police. And I couldn't show this piece. I had actually a national traveling exhibition through Morocco by invitation in 2000, before 9/11, which I took like almost 30 pieces. And that, I couldn't take anything political, so that one stayed home. This one went, even though it has some hidden stuff in it, political stuff. This one couldn't go, because basically, those went along with his thing. Anyway, this is more samples of the work. Oh, by the way, this is all ink on paper. It's called scratchboard. Anybody familiar with scratchboard? Basically, you paint the whole paper black, and then you scratch it off. I use a X-Acto knife, so it's one piece that's small, like this one. This is actually a small piece. It takes about a month, and this takes about 7 months. This one I just took a mirror and painted the mirror, and then used that as a frame for the scratchboard. Oh, and I didn't say anything about them. In terms of these, one of the things I wanted to do with Morocco, because at that time, there was nothing that really, once I got involved in doing work that was political, I thought, well, there's nothing about, first of all, they're a Muslim country, and Muslims really are not supposed to be doing artwork that represents people. So they had all this tile and stuff, but there were no portraits of people, except photographs. And I thought, this is the perfect subject. Here's marginalized people who don't have any really fine artwork done of them. I'm gonna use them as my subject and try to elevate the culture in this way, and also document the culture, because a lot of it was going away. Very quickly, Western modernity was just, early 90s was just swooping in, and now it's completely different than it was. So I thought it would be really good to kind of document some of the historical stuff while it's still around and I can still see it. Anyway, so this is my husband's mother, and I did a lot of family members. And this one has the traditional Mazit. They have actually tattooed the language on their face and stuff like that. So, let me see. These were, I did a whole series on headdresses. Now these I was able to take to Morocco and show them. These are big pieces, about 3 by 2 by 3, not that big, but, and you can see the years I did these back in 89, 99. Some of them were shown at Harvard. I've shown all over the place, but the traveling show was a very big one. Because I basically started in one part of Morocco, and I just had all these venues and did it for a summer. It was very interesting. Now, you might get the hint that I'm kind of trying to push people to become political, and that's not really the point. I think the point is more, what you can say that's going to be relevant. What is going to be an issue that you find important. And I did a little research, and I found that for millennials, this is millennials all over the world, were asked what are the most serious problems of the world. Okay? So I'm going to go through these very quickly. There's no reason to take too long. Number 10, this is a countdown. Lack of economic opportunity and unemployment. People agree with that? You guys are millennials mostly, right? Yeah. 9, safety and security, well-being. Lack of education. Food, water security, big one in the United States. Government accountability, wow. And transparency and corruption. That's a big one in the United States right now. Anybody heard of Trump? Trump? He's our source of entertainment right now. And embarrassment. Anyway, I promised I wouldn't say anything, but it's really, really hard. Especially being me, you know? Anyway, religious conflict, that's a big one. Number 5. Number 4, poverty. Poverty is huge in the United States. They try to hide it, but poverty is just growing huge. And there's whole sections of cities that just look like third world countries, and it's getting worse. They're not really doing anything to fix it. Inequality in income distribution, big one in the United States. Do you have that problem here?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I think everybody has a little bit of this problem, but it's getting worse and worse in the United States. Large-scale conflict and wars. Wow. Yeah. The United States is behind a lot of that. So, I mean, you can tell my politics right now, can't you? It's just terrible. Anyway, the art of war, see, the United States here, war is hell, but they make all their money that way, you know. So I did some work about war because war really bothers me. And when we got into the Iraq war, back in 2001, after 9/11, my husband and I just kind of, our brains exploded. It was terrible. And that's why we ended up going to Oman to teach for a year, because we just wanted to leave. And we did. We just said, okay. No, this is not, she asked if this is an oil painting. It's not, it's a scratch board. It's ink. It's ink on paper. I'm sorry I didn't put it down what it is. This one's called Baghdad, and it's basically showing this girl with, shock and awe happening in the background. I was so angry, Really, doing the art helped me, though. Doing the artwork about it, it helped me feel better. Even if it's not making a change necessarily, and a lot of people don't want to see it. When I showed work in Oman, when I was having an exhibition there, they said, show this one, don't show this, don't show this, don't show. These were the political ones. They don't want to show those. Don't show this, don't show this. So, but anyway, so this one was inspired by this girl. I saw this picture. I've never been to Iraq, by the way. All this stuff I kind of created. But I saw this picture of this girl who was just standing on a pile of rubble, and I just thought, it came to me, this whole idea of this just skulls, you know what I mean? And I put the American military here. Luckily, we can do this in the United States and not go to prison. But because I've done a lot of that type of stuff and nobody so far, although my son, the oldest one who's in, his father said something on Facebook that was a little bit political, and he goes, Dad, take that down. You're going to lose me my clearance. His security clearance. And we're like, what? But so he took it down. But anyway, he hasn't complained about my artwork, though. That's good. But anyway, this is Fallujah, when they just came in and massacred all these kids, the American military. And then this is one of the historic pieces of Iraq that was basically destroyed. So you have history, you have all this stuff. And this one is just, to me, I have this, you can't see it very well, but this is like the Scream. This is a little homage to the Scream here. And, it's just, I had a lot more that I was going to do, but I never finished them. So that's, that was one of my little, I think it is therapeutic, though, to do that. If you're very upset about something, you get to do artwork about it, especially fine art that's your own stuff, that's not depending upon being sold. It really helps you. It helps your soul. The biggest one is climate change and destruction of nature. Right now, California is burning, officially. And, you know, it is a problem. I mean, and the United States is not doing anything about it. We're leading the way to keep it going worse. So, who knows? Anyway. So again, back to the process of becoming an artist. Number 7, you know, what do you have to offer? You know, what do you have to offer the art world? And not just the, you know, commercial art, but I mean, think about it. This is nothing that you have to like, oh, I have to do this and I have to do it now. It's just something to think about as you finish your degrees, you get into your professional life. You know, think about what you can add. This is called fan art. Okay, this everybody know fan art? It's lovely. It's really lovely. How many people do fan art? Woo, there you go, good. Yeah, fan art is cool. When I do portfolio review, I do presentations in Miami at this conference, this animation conference, and I do portfolio reviews for these kids that are in high school still. They come in, they show you a portfolio, they want to be animators. Tons of fan art. But, you know, it's a good way to build your skill. It's good. But eventually you want to get beyond that. You want to get your own. This is not your own voice. This is a voice of somebody else. So it's a good thing to practice. When I was young, I did cartoons. I wanted to be able to do it. Could I do it? You know, once I learned to do it and I could do it, I just went on to other things. So, whee! Escapism art. This one kind of like bothers me. And you don't have to be bothered by it. It's just my personal thing. I don't like escapist art. This is Kincaid light paintings. They're beautiful. They're very nice. I mean, to a certain extent, it's nice to have this type of stuff in your house if it matches your couch or whatever. I've read articles in preparing for this presentation to try to update and everything, and you know, I see this stuff that says, you know, should art be political or should it be for pleasure? You know what I mean? And the whole argument is it should be for pleasure. This is pleasure. This is pleasure, and it's very nice. And I'm not saying that it's bad. I mean, it's good to have a little bit of it around, but I think it's just kind of like escaping as artists, you know. Anyway. But if you want to do it, that's all right. Whee! Now, changing the world versus reflecting the world. I mean, how many people would like to change the world? Oh, wow. Awesome. Reflecting the world. Would you like to show it as it is? That's good, too. What's wrong with that? That's good. Reflecting is what it, you know, what is or reflects what it is or what it was, right? And I do that too. When I'm documenting, when I want to basically document Moroccan, you know, traditional clothing, you know, that's a type of showing what was, you know, so that it's down, so that, you know, in the future people will be able to see it, you know. Envisioning what could be or should be is another way to speak as an artist as well. Now I'm going to give you some more samples of my art. This is another pen. This is another ink on paper. This is a close-up of it, and unfortunately, this texture here just totally cuts it up. You can't see the lines. I'm a very obsessive person. 7 months. It's a big one. It's about this big, like this. It was shown in Morocco too. It's called Thamaziet. It's the name of the language, and it shows the traditional wedding. And in Morocco, it's sort of like India. They were kind of like isolated in different areas, so they have their totally different cultures from one area to the other. They have totally different headdresses, totally different, and it's amazing and it's beautiful. And I really wanted to document some of it because everybody's going modern now. Modern is what's important. Modern is what's good, you know. When I had my exhibition in Morocco, I was the biggest, most important one that I had was in Rabat, in the Royal, what's it called, Theater. The Royal Theater, they have like this gallery at the theater. And it was very exciting. The Prince of Morocco at that time, I guess the king's sister, went to it and everything. It was really cool. I'm kind of like a little bit well-known in Morocco. They use my artwork for different things. My artwork was in like children's like art history books and stuff. But, you know, it was like these people came up to me who are very well respected. The guy he works for Le Monde, I think the newspaper Le Monde, and he says, you know, this is not good. we're modern people. This is not, you shouldn't be showing us like this. You know what I mean? This is embarrassing to us. And I'm like, okay. I felt bad because, it's like, okay, my husband loves it. He comes up with a lot of the concepts, and I love doing it because it's important. I think it's important. But then to feel like that I insulted people was kind of bad. But Amar said, "Don't worry about that. They don't know what they're talking about." But it was kind of concerning because it's like we don't want, they don't want to. Now, what's happened since I did this is there's been a lot more this type of work showing up in Morocco. I see it online now. I'm like, whoa. There's been a lot more people doing work that shows the traditional, that celebrates the traditional, which I think is cool. Celebrating in fine art. Now this is more like family work. This is my husband. These are our 3 kids when they were little. I never did color that one. I cut myself out. I didn't like myself in that one. This is kind of an important one. This one I did show in Morocco. This is called The Foreigner. And this is The Foreigner. That's me back 26 years ago. And this is my husband and his mother. Anyway, I like that one. So that's Moroccan. This is more on the headdress series that I did. And again, you can see the difference in the styles. It's amazing. It's colorful. It's beautiful. When I had an exhibition in Oman, I did a whole series on Oman. It was all black and white. So I had from Morocco to Oman. And I had all these Moroccan pieces. They're so colorful. And then all these Oman pieces, they're all black and white because it was pretty much all black and white. It was very interesting. But it was all charcoal, too. This is one of the last pieces I've just finished recently. And I want to do a series on women working. And again, it's a woman wearing traditional stuff. And it's amazing because in Morocco, this is the traditional woman. She's not all covered and with the burqa and all this stuff. This is how women dressed. And there's my husband. He likes it when I do artwork about him. When I go away, this is his head. Okay, this is the wax piece for the bronze. So that's like the original that I did. And then this is the bronze that I poured from it. And when he's gone, I talk to the head. When I'm gone, he talks to the head. When anybody comes to our house, he introduces them to the head. And he says he did it. He's funny. You guys would love him. Come on. Give him a visa. Come on. Give him a visa. Anyway, this is bronze. These are all bronze pieces. These were all done like 2013 or whatever. Now, this is not an animation, nor is it like so many pieces. It's just like I decided, I'm going to do it I'm take photographs from all the way around so you can really get an idea of what this thing looks like. I don't know why. Now, this one was shown in I show a lot in museums around the United States. This one was shown in the Orlando Museum. I showed a lot there. There's another one. I did a series of 3 of these belly dancers. And this is the wise man, all bronze. And these are little girl series. I did a whole bunch of little girls, like I don't know how many pieces, because I wanted to do something small enough. I do consider that I want to be able to sell some work. My work is expensive. I sell prints, postcards, stuff like that, but selling the originals are very expensive. And I thought, well, if I do something small enough, people can afford it. Well, that didn't work. Because this little girl here, I did a whole series. She's only about this big. And to pour her in bronze costs $125. So, you add that to all the other work that you do in that, the wax, this and that and the other, and then grinding it and buffing it and coloring it, and it's just like it gets, anyway. Digital work. This is the final bit I'm showing is digital work, because I do pretty much everything. I didn't add my life drawing, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were going to talk about that, because I do talk about that a lot in Miami because it is an animation. And that's one of my things I taught. It was figure drawing for animation and game design, so that was one of my specialties. But these are some pieces that I did in my workshop that I give in Miami. Basically, everyone has a Cintiq. These were drawn with Cintiqs. So here is the model. And then I just demonstrate how to do it, and the students do it on their Cintiqs. Everybody know what a Cintiq is? Cintiq, right? Yeah, where you actually draw right on the screen. They have big ones. They have a whole Cintiq lab over there. It's really cool. And then this is the model here, and this is the one I drew to show. It showed digital painting and not just sketching. Digital painting takes way too long. Okay, so this is an example. This is more of a concept piece I did. I'm doing a series. Who knows when it'll get done or if it'll ever get done. But I'm doing a series on the Statue of Liberty. Political, right? Well, this is how I see the United States, you know. It's like, oh, glamour, you know, style. Look how thin she is. Isn't she beautiful? Isn't she beautiful here? Look, she's in the harbor with her heels. And she's holding, oh, look at this. Her hair is like, whew. And then here's the, you know, the Twin Towers. This is before. See, I see the United States sort of acting like that before 9/11. After 9/11, I'm going to do another one with a, you know, Statue of Liberty acting a little different. After 9/11. The problem is this takes way too long. This now this is a digital painting that will print out at 5 foot by 3 foot. And it is huge. It's gigabytes size. It's just crazy. And when I draw it, it just takes forever to draw it. I don't know. I can paint a picture much faster than digitally painting. Anyway, so it's almost done. I kind of like it, but I don't know. It's a little too stylized for me. But I like the concept. And then here's a couple more samples. This is the last couple I'm showing. These are all digital paintings. This is my grandmother. This is a person who's not Moroccan. She's British. And my father, who passed away, and my oldest son who likes that. These are totally digital, so, you know, if you want the work, you got to print it out. But I did draw them. Now, these are smaller, like this big, but they can be printed out pretty good size. So, to summary, okay, so I'm going to try to summarize this whole thing. Basically, you know, love creating art, learn to see, learn technical concepts, learn art history, understand yourself, and then understand your world and know what you have to offer. I mean, when you talk about your voice, it's not somebody else's voice. It's not Disney. It's not fan art, you know. It's like, what can you do? What can you do to add? And everybody can. And it takes different styles, different ways. Your creativity is the only thing that will hinder you, is like your imagination. And last but not least, persevere. This is very important because the only reason I'm still doing this is because I persevered. Because everybody that I went to college with, literally everybody in my undergraduate class, nobody's doing art. They're all off doing something else. They did that, you know. So eventually, even if you're not the best, you'll be the last one standing if you persevere. You know what I'm talking about? So. Not really, but, you know, it does thin out after a while. And that's one of the things I really stress to my students when I taught at university. I mean, it takes perseverance, it takes hard work. You think you're a fancy, great artist. I had students come into my classes. It got kind of bad towards the end. They have this kind of like, in the United States, they have this thing where people, the younger crowd feels entitled. They just have this entitled attitude. And there were students coming into my class who were just like, I'm the best. I'm done. You can't teach me anything. I'm good, you know? And I'm like, what? No. You take that attitude and you take where you are. You're good. Yeah, you're good. And everybody said that they're good because they're the best one in their area. But, you know, there's a lot of really other good people out there. You got to keep working. So some people would change their attitude. Some people didn't. But, boy, did it tick off the faculty, though. They get to know them and like, wow, you know. Wow, the attitude. Interesting thing, when I first started, I never had that. It's just coming up. I don't know what it is. Anyway, thank you for attending. I'm going to take questions. And by the way, I really like it when people contact me. Some people become friends on Facebook. I have Pinterest. I have all sorts of things. So, and I'm happy to look at people's work and then give you suggestions. Whatever. So I think it's very important to network as artists. You've got to really network and meet people, and whenever you get a connection, try to make it and keep it. So, questions?
Any questions? Yeah.
Hello, ma'am. It was really nice knowing about you. And how do you aware the world through your paintings exactly?
I'm sorry?
How do you aware people? How do you aware the world through your paintings?
How do I aware?
Yeah. How do you make people aware about whatever work?
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Well, I mean, I make them, and then I try to show them as much as possible. I have a website online. And I try to have exhibitions. I send well, I don't like apply for exhibitions anymore, but I do it by invitation. And then whenever you exhibit, they always want to know why, what, where, you have an artist statement.
That is a segment of people who are interested in art. But
Yeah.
what about the people who hardly know anything about art? How do we make them aware about importance of what art is important and how?
That's a very good question, too.
Yeah, because that's what the challenge I'm facing.
I don't think you have as much problem in India as we do in the United States, because I have never met an Indian person who didn't like art.
They are interested
it's amazing.
in art, but art is not that much valued. I mean, it's
that's
taken for granted, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are not valued that should be, like teachers. I mean, in the United States, what they value now, what people are valuing is all the commercialism. They're valuing people who are actors and actresses who, like the directors are the ones who are the artists of movies, and they like the actors, they like the models, they like, everyone's putting them so high, like sports people, So our whole societies, and especially in the United States, are just valuing certain things, wealth. They value wealth over someone's life, That's Trump. It's just like, why? I mean, where did we lose our morals? That's what I'm saying. It's like, that's why you got to look at your own values. And for me, the way that I have done it in the past is through teaching art appreciation. When you teach art appreciation to college students who are not guaranteed not going to go into art, and they have no interest, and they resent the fact they're sitting in your class. They resent it. And then if you can take those students and kind of like get them excited. I mean, when I took art appreciation, I had to take it my freshman year. I hated art by the time I finished it, and I was an artist, So you got to think about how to make it a positive experience for people, how to make it fun, how to make it, how to make them love it.
Do you ever get demotivated or about if someone criticizes your art? Does this happen to you?
No. Well, I used to. I used to be very sensitive.
How did you overcome that?
Oh, but artists are just like that. Oh. Artists are just, oh my God. I was so bad when I was young. I had a huge ego. That's what I'm saying. It's good to have a huge ego. To be an artist, you have to believe you can do it.
Yeah, because I have
that's
friends.
what I tell students. It's like students who are all timid in their drawing and stuff. I said, believe you could do it. Believe it and make that mark. And, if it's not right, then whatever. Just go on and do another one. Because people get all, and you have to have an ego to a certain extent. You have to believe in it. And when people criticize that, it does hurt. It stings, especially when you're young and you're not, I'm old. I feel like I'm in a privileged position now because I've done it so long. I've shown so much. Okay, you don't like it, so what? I don't like some things too. It's not that everybody's going to like your work, but and not everybody's going to like what you're saying or how you're saying it. I had a lot of criticism in college because I was representational, and it was all abstract. And I got kicked around at a high university. I got kicked around. Even as a graduate student, I got kicked around. That's what kind of made me...
It doesn't seem so.
It made me resentful, and that's why it made me go even further and go, okay, how can I push the boundaries further and, put it in your face? So, yeah, anyway. So, yeah, I think to a certain extent...
Is there anything special, like anything specific strategy you would like to share with us, how to overcome all that criticism and let that focus be in your, because paintings are all, what you make is all connected with your emotions. So once you get distracted or get demotivated, it's all ruined. This is what I feel when I paint.
That can happen. When you're, there's a lot of different ways to do it. I mean, there's ways to be subtle. I mean, when you learn art history, there were artists who were doing work that was commissioned that they had to do, like they were like commercial artists. They had to do but they would hide things in them. It's like, there's like different stuff that they put in there just to kind of like satisfy themselves and to feel like, okay, I got you on that. So it's like a type of protest in what's happening. In terms of trying to make someone like it or appreciate it when they don't, I think there's a few opportunities that we have as artists to do that. If you're an art teacher and you're teaching art appreciation, don't beat the kids over the head because, it's very tempting. It's like, oh, you don't like art, well, I'm going to give you an F. If you don't behave and bow down and stuff, no. I mean, I think that it's better to just make it a very positive experience, keep it very simple. Think about what I did is I ended up thinking, what are the 10 things? Students end up losing, at least in the United States, the studies say that they lose something like 80% of what they learn. They go through the class, they learn it all, and only maybe 10% or 20% is retained. And I'm thinking, I'm going to decide what that 10 or 20% is. What do I want those people to remember? And then I really honed that down, and I gave them lots of positive rewards. In other words, hey, you can get an A in this class. You have to do this, this. I made it very clear. I didn't mystify, And in doing that, I just got in. It was so positive. And I'm hoping that those people...
You didn't let that energy distract your this thing. And all that negative, whatever negative things, you didn't let that ruin your this thing. So that's what
When I was young?
Yeah.
Oh, with criticism? Oh, yeah, I would...
Not exactly criticism, but wherever I have presented my work, it's either they have appreciated it because it was me, they like me, so they say, oh, you have drawn it, so it's good. And they hardly...
Well, I always one of the things that I appreciated about some of the art teachers that I had is that they were very good at teaching how to critique. And critiquing, I like to call it sandwiching. Like you say, it's important to point out where the good parts are, as well as what needs improved, or what I don't understand. What are you trying to say with this? And when you tell me what you're trying to say, I'm going, it's not coming through. Maybe if you do A, B, C, it'll come through better. Is a better approach to actually criticizing art than to just say, oh, that's wrong, you're bad, or whatever. I think that to a certain extent, that's a big problem. And I think that when you teach students, I mean, in the United States, critiquing is a really big thing, and the students have to critique each other's work. And you have to teach them how to do it right, or you have a chaos on your hands and sometimes people do get mean. It's like, wait a second, no. And they're graded on it too. It's like, okay, you're going to get mean, okay. That was not a good critique. You can't get mean. You have to be constructive. So I think when you're given constructive criticism, and I've seen students get mad about that, it's like it's constructive, hey, put yourself aside. If it's constructive, you got to think about it. Maybe you'll disagree, maybe you'll agree, but just take it into consideration. If it goes against what you're trying to do, then just push it aside. Because I've also seen artists who take every bit of criticism and then they try to change their work each time, and they're going around in circles. It's like, no, just you gotta have something that's your goal. And then if that person says something that doesn't match with your goal, I mean, just go, okay, well, that's nice, but that's not what I'm trying to do. So, and then go and get something from somebody who is going to actually give you the help that you need to produce what you're going for. You know what I'm talking about, so.
Anyone else? Questions? Yeah, okay.
Hi.
Hi.
This is a really simple one. So if you weren't doing art, what would you be doing?
Good question. She said, if I wasn't doing art, what would I be doing? I can tell you, I tried to groom my youngest, who I know is really smart and artistic, to be a plastic surgeon. I would love to be a plastic surgeon because that's the ultimate of sculpture. You know what I mean? And to be able to help people who are in car accidents or whatever, that would be awesome if I just, but the only thing that's holding me back is math. You have to know math.
You have to know maths, yes.
But I don't mind blood, and I like changing things.
That's a handicap with a lot of creative people.
I would have been richer if I was a plastic surgeon.
Who else? Any questions? Anyone else? Yeah, someone there? Yeah.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi. Am I audible?
I can't, yeah.
Hello. Yeah. Hi. I have faced that with a lot of my students as well. They are brilliant artists. They create very good artwork, even in terms of design. But when it comes to articulating that,
Yeah.
that becomes a little bit of a problem because sometimes they are, how should I say, psychologically, or they're just introverted. They feel shy to talk about their own work. Sometimes it's linguistic issues. So is there a way which can overcome both of these? And as teachers, how can we impart that in our students so that they feel about their work and are very forthcoming about it, despite any handicaps?
So just to make sure I understand your question, so you're saying that the student is not feeling, they're good, but they're not feeling good about it, or are they? Oh, expressing. Yes. See, the reason that we're artists is because we visually communicate. We're not necessarily so good at verbally communicating. So that has to be totally taught. You have to, there's been very few that I have met that come out of the gate, as they say, able to speak about art. You have to learn the vocabulary, and then you have to learn how to use it, and it takes a lot of practice. I found that my online students, because I taught online for years, the online students had to do it, they had to write it down. And they got really good at it. By the end, they could really do it. The ones that were doing face-to-face classes, they're the ones struggled more because they didn't have to write it down and because they could kind of like escape sometimes. And it's a classroom situation. It's not so cut and dry. But it really takes practice. And for most of you who are going into commercial arts, it's really important to be able to talk about it, because if you can't talk about it, you're not going to be able to talk to your boss or your coworkers. You're not going to be able to work in a team. Team production type stuff is very important. You have to be able to communicate, and you have to be able to take criticism, and you have to be flexible, and you got to put your ego at the door and all that type of stuff, even if you're fantastic, So I don't know if that helped at all. It's just practice. It's like just like art to a certain extent. It's practice, drill.
Yeah.
And they won't like it. They won't like it.
Hello.
Most
Hi,
of your
ma'am.
students won't like it, but they have to do it.
So my question is, you have traveled around so many places, you have experienced things. So how those experiences have changed your definition of art?
Wow. That's a really good question. My latest experience was I traveled from January until April of this year, and I went to 10 different countries with my husband. We did globe-trotting, and I went to so many galleries. I actually got to see Michelangelo's work. I saw David. I went to his grave, I saw everything. And really it did change me. Well, one thing I have a problem with, everything I see, I want to do something about it. It inspires me. I'm like, I want to do something with this. And then I want to do something with that. And it kind of overwhelmed me because I just got spinning around and around, I wanted to do so many things, and there's no way, and I don't have time. So in fact, the few projects I did start, I still haven't worked on. I still haven't had a chance to finish them. So I don't know. I just think that it's just, to me, I get overwhelmed with the amount of art that's out there. And then I get to thinking wow, do we need more? No, but yeah, we have more people. How many people do we have now? So yeah, we can always use more artwork, and we can always do that. But it's amazing to see the art that's out there. And it makes me also wonder, what about this other stuff? I'm sorry. This is one thing that, if you look up on my website, it's kind of hidden, but I wrote an article back before I started teaching at the university. I thought I would never get a job because I wrote this article saying, minimalism, about minimalists. Because one person does it. Talk about fine art. Fine art says it should be unique, and it should be aesthetic and everything. Once you have a minimalist painting that's just a one blank canvas with some color, how many times do different artists have to do that? That's the thing that frustrates me. So it's why? So anyway, but that's what Europe does. I mean, I went through Europe. I would like to go through India sometime like that. I'd like to go to Egypt and see more. But it's just, of course, if you go to England, you can see a lot of the Egyptian and a lot of the Indian work there because they stole it. I saw it. They have lots of it there. So if you want to trip around the world, go to that National Museum in London. They got walls. They just take the whole wall. I'm surprised you guys haven't asked for it back. Like, give us our wall back.
Still trying, I think.
Oh, did you try? I think
Crown
you should have a thing where all the people get together in all the world and say, hey, give them their art back. It's embarrassing.
Yes, we have another couple of questions
Okay.
here.
Good afternoon, ma'am. You've been to so many countries and so many different continents, I think. So out of all the art that you've seen or the art forms, is there something that really caught your eye or influenced you?
I always go back to the masters. I mean, I was very surprised at Da Vinci. I always I like his sketching and stuff, but I saw his work. I was like, what? Like, everyone's all excited about Da Vinci. And the Mona Lisa, like, and then the other thing but Michelangelo, I mean, I saw David in the way they have, in Italy, the way they have it lined up with all of these sculptures going. I mean, they even had the color of the walls just right, and the scale of the building. It was just like awesome. I mean, I loved all of his work before, but it's just like, it speaks to me because to a certain extent, and my husband and I were talking about it because that was made to be like David and the biblical thing. But to me, it's like, this is not about David and the biblical thing. This is about humanity. This is about human. This is a human here. And look at how great humans are. Look what they can do. You know what I mean? It's like amazing. It's almost like when you see a great gymnast or you see a great athlete that just does things, and you think, well, if I did 20 years of practice and stuff, maybe I could do that too. But it's just like, I think Michelangelo, is probably my biggest influence even when I was a kid, and it still is amazes me. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Any more questions? Yeah?
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so my question is, how did you relate your artwork to animation? Like, how did you get into it, and why did you choose to do animation?
Animation, that's very interesting. I always loved animation. I'll never forget when we first got the VCR. And now this is way before you guys' time. I mean, this is like VCR was when I was in high school, like finishing high school. And I got a VCR, because I always loved animation. I mean, I always watched cartoons, everything, I loved it. I never wanted to be an animator, because I thought, oh wow, I would not have the patience to just draw the same thing over and over again. But I just love it. So anyway, when I saw it, it was great. And I liked frame-to-frame animation. So basically how I got into it is, it's a long story, but after I finished my master's degree, and I basically really got into digital stuff, because my husband's area is education, instructional technology. So, and he had a job as an instructional technologist and director, so I had access to all this technology. And I just used it. I was like, wow, I taught myself Photoshop, I taught myself, it was called Macromedia Flash. I mean, that's how I kind of got into it, because I started developing websites back in because I wanted a website, way before you could even go and get one, really. I got my first website up, I think, in 1998 or 1997. And then I started a business because I learned it, and I was good enough at it, and then and I got into web animation, doing animation for websites. And then, boom, I mean, they needed a teacher who had a master's degree, has all this background, and then also can do animation, and there was nobody that they were teaching at the universities yet. So that's how I ended up teaching it, because I figured it out. And then it was really weird, because the students are like, by the end, I mean, a lot of the faculty I dealt with did the same thing, because there was no such thing as a master's degree in game art, or there was no master's. So all these faculty that were hired, they're like, we had to figure this stuff out. These students don't want to figure, like, I don't know how to understand. Like, can you show me how to? It's like you show them over and over again. Not all the students, just like some that were just amazing. But anyway. But I think with art, it's that way. I was at a conference, and every single person who was one person is a game designer. He's working for some famous game company. Another person's an animator working for Disney. Another person. We're sitting in this round table, basically talking about, and it was academics versus, meets industry. And it was very fascinating because every single person in the industry had a different idea of what they started out to do. That's why the foundations, when I was a director, foundations were absolute. If you get all the foundations, you know what I'm talking about? All the composition, all the foundations down, you can basically do any type of art. You can teach yourself the other. You have to be able to maneuver around because maybe that other job is not going to be there, but another thing will come up. So almost everybody was doing something different than what they set out to do and what they got a degree in doing. So it's amazing. I don't know. You have to have your opportunity, options open, right, as they say.
Thank you. Is
Yeah.
there any other question? Yeah? There's somebody at the back. I think we have to give the people a chance at the back. Right there. Yeah. Come back to you.
Hello.
It's not working.
Hello.
Hello.
So my question to you is that so you've had a lot of social issue work that you showed right now in your artworks, and the second that is the abstract work earlier. So in both of these artworks,
I really can't. Just a second, I can't hear. Well, I can't come over there. I can't go down the stairs, but can you, maybe you come up.
Come up.
It sounds like an important question. I want to hear this. Something about abstract. I want to make sure and clarify in case I've insulted anyone about abstract. Yeah, go ahead.
Hold the mic close.
so the thing is that you showed very much socially driven artworks right now, like social issues, right, like war and everything like that. And in your earlier career, you had done abstract artworks, if I'm not wrong. So in comparison to these two artworks, which one is the most difficult to ideate and to be socially acceptable? Which is the
So which one are you thinking that I did was abstract? Which?
when you did it, which one was difficult for you to ideate? Which were socially driven causes or the ones which were abstract, which you did it earlier?
I'm trying to think of what I did that was abstract. I've done like abstracted and I've done stylized, but I don't know about abstract because you can, like which ones will be abstract? Can you describe the one that you think that was abstract?
No. Right now you showed us the social causes, which the wars and the Iraq and the ones that you showed right now.
Yeah.
Those artworks and the ones that you did in your before career, like your abstract paintings from before. So in comparison to those,
No, I don't think you're saying abstract. I think you mean her earlier work and her later work.
Okay, that's a good question. Okay, so my earlier work, if you notice, and if you go through, I have a whole bedroom that just has all my work from high school and stuff. And it's like, it's all about practice. Can I do it? You know what I mean? I did everything. I did watercolor. I did what's it called? Like mountains, and I did what I would now call escapist art. But I did everything that I could do to see if I could do it. I mean, I just wanted to master. I always wanted to be the type of artist that could do just about anything. I wanted to be. I forget the name of it. They have it like. Basically, an artist that can do.
I think she also means whether you, the shift from what you did earlier and what you did as more socially relevant. Is there some kind of, thought process behind that?
Well, everything that I did in the earlier stuff was basically mastering something, trying to do it. Really, when I was working on, for example, which I don't have any examples of here, but the work that I did of mentally disabled adults, I pretty much did it because they were available. But then as I was doing it, I was thinking, well, no one's done any paintings of this. This is a good thing to do. I wasn't really thinking of it as political. You know what I mean? Even when I was doing some of the other work, I don't think, oh, I'm going to do something political. I just do something that I'm passionate about. You know what I mean? And when I was younger, I was passionate about a lot of things that I did ballerinas. I was passionate about ballet, I thought it was beautiful. But, now it's not so important
But
to me
which
anymore.
one was more difficult to ideate, the abstract ones or the ones which had a social importance to it?
Well, I'm the most proud of, there's a few pieces that I'm the most proud of, and one of them is the Mother's Tears, which I did like 20 years ago now, 25 years, and it's just like, that piece just came together, and I still love it. I mean, because it just says, it speaks to my heart, as you might say. It makes me, I like looking at it, it speaks to me. So it's just like, I do end up liking my political work more. That's why whenever I'm doing something like the picture of my grandmother and my father portrait, I feel almost guilty when I'm doing it. I'm like, who is this for? It's for me, but, who's going to even care? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Any other questions do we have? Oh, we have quite a few. Okay.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
Yeah, my question is with all the evil that is in this world, with all the pain and the suffering, can art really change the world for the good? Can it make a difference?
I think it can. I think that the reason why in the United States they won't fund it, they won't fund political art, they won't fund anything that says something social, is because it's powerful. And if they funded it, they would be cutting their own throats. So the banks, all the people who are funding art in the United States will not fund it. And that's why we're kind of left, we're kind of left doing it on our own. And that's why I'm saying, don't go and starve to death doing this. You got to take care of yourself. But also be aware. Educate yourself. As you get older, think about stuff. You know what I mean? And everybody has something that's different. There's so many issues to deal with. I read an article that said basically, I was asked, the guy was giving a presentation, and he said, I was asked during the presentation, why are you just repeating what's happening? Why aren't you out doing something about it? As if art isn't doing something about it. And he says, and that really stuck to me. So I decided to stop doing art, and I started doing something about it. I'm like, what? Okay, so you're not an artist anymore. Okay, so that's fine. But art is powerful. The reason I used to not think that it really meant anything. I just loved it. But when I studied it, and when I actually struggled with trying to get, for example, grants. I wanted a grant. I wanted to do a grant about poverty in the United States. Do you think I qualified? Do you think they gave me any money? No. No, they're going to go and put it on something that's just like, la, 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 and it's like, there's nothing. You know what I mean? So it is powerful. If it was out there, people would be changing, I think. That's my belief. Now, I could be wrong. That's me.
Thank you.
But I do think it is powerful.